Talking a little 2024 fantasy football today. All right, Mitch, today let's look at quarterbacks that are absolute poison for the 2024 fantasy football season. Give me your top 3 NFL quarterbacks that fantasy football players should avoid at all costs.
Well, to start off, I think you should avoid all the top quarterbacks. I'm not a guy who's going to draft a quarterback early, but I got some guys in different ranges. The first one is the top quarterback on the board. I will not be drafting Josh Allen in any of my leagues. For one reason, it is because he's the top quarterback, and I'm just not going to spend a third-round pick on that guy. But there's bigger problems in Buffalo. Who's he throwing the ball to? Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman? Like, Keon Coleman could be good. He could also be a huge bust. I could see it going either direction. I don't think he's going to put up the same passing yard totals without Stephon Diggs there. And there are some injury concerns with Allen. I know he's been pretty healthy during his career, but in 2022, he had a pretty significant elbow injury. They chose not to have surgery. And I watch a lot of baseball. And when guys choose to not have surgeries on their elbows, that can lead to danger a few years down the line. So I'm just not going to spend one of my top 3 picks on Josh Allen. Another guy who I think a lot of people are probably going to be avoiding this year is Deshaun Watson. He's currently QB 21, so he's relevant in your really deep leagues or your 2 QB leagues, but I don't think he should be relevant at all. Like, he was terrible the last couple seasons. He's played 12 games across the last 2 years, 14 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, like 180 yards a game. That is not fantasy relevant at all. He had over 20 fantasy points just twice last year. Do not draft Deshaun. And you can hold an ethical thing up to the rest of your league, being like, I'm not going to draft Deshaun. You don't have to say it's because he sucks. You can say it's because you're a good guy. But, this works too. My third one, and I think this one might be a bit more controversial. He's a value play for a lot of people in the deeper leagues. Will Levis. I'm not going to draft him. I know a lot of people are banking on a big jump from him. I did not really like what I saw last year. He had a few good games throwing to DeAndre Hopkins, but he averaged 11 fantasy points per game. That's like a flex wide receiver, not your starting quarterback. And I think Malik Willis, maybe even Mason Rudolph, could push him for the starting job in the preseason. I'm not investing a pick in Will Levis this year.
Man, I'm on the Will Levis fan club this year. Like late round flyer, 2 QB leagues. I like him as a QB 2 or 3. Based on this, the weapons they have there are pretty good. I say good. You know, if Hopkins is healthy, they have 3 good receivers with Ridley and Boyd, but they're going to be trailing a lot. So if he has to sit back and sling it, like this could be one of those like Jameis Winston seasons where the team he's on goes, you know, back then they're going 6-10, 8-8, whatever. They weren't really relevant. But he's throwing 30 touchdowns, and maybe he'll have 20 interceptions to go with it, but he could win you some weeks.
It's possible. He could also lose you a lot of weeks, too. If he's
yeah.
You're not going to lose a league with the 24th quarterback off the board. He's not going to stick your entire draft, but he's just not a guy that late I'm going to invest in. Take one of the mid-range quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers this year, some of the guys in the 10 to 20 range, and then use those late flyers on like the backup running backs, backup wide receivers. You don't need to take Will Levis.
I like that. My concern, seeing when Josh Allen's going, you have like the Allen, Mahomes, Lamar. They're kind of going in that 3-4 range. Stroud maybe in the 5th round or something. There's almost like a dead zone-ish there for star players. So my thought is when you're in that dead zone, and let's say you don't, you know, whatever you pick, and you have a good receiver, you have a good running back, and it's like, I could get this guy who I kind of believe in, who could be a wide receiver too, or I could get my QB1 and be set up for the season because you're going for star power.
I get like what you're saying, but I just like quarterbacks, the way they work in fantasy, you're on draft day. It's so enticing to get CJ Stroud in the 5th round.
Yeah.
He's going to average like 1-2 more points than like an Aaron Rodgers, than a mid-round quarterback. The difference between the elite guys and the mid-range guys just isn't the same as the mid-range receivers and like the scrub backups. So you got to load up on those guys because there's bye weeks, there's injuries, and you can stream, unless you're in like a 30-team 2 QB league, you can stream the Baker Mayfields of the world all season to quarterback success if your quarterback pick flops.